He fell in love with his son's wife at 63. James Wilson was 63 years old, a retired firefighter living in a quiet town in Pennsylvania. He had been widowed for nearly 10 years, and though he had grown used to solitude, the silence in his house still carried a sting. His days were steady but empty: morning walks, tending the small garden, reading newspapers, and the occasional trip to the community center. What he missed most wasn't excitement but companionship, someone to share thoughts, laughter, and simple moments with. His only son, Daniel, had married a young woman named Emily 3 years earlier. James had been there on their wedding day, standing proudly as his son's best man. Emily was kind, gentle, and full of warmth, the kind of woman James thought would bring balance into Daniel's restless, ambitious life. But he quickly realized that his son didn't truly value the gift he had. Daniel was always working late, traveling for business, or glued to his phone. He saw marriage as a responsibility, something to check off a list. Emily, meanwhile, carried herself with grace, but James noticed the way her eyes dimmed when Daniel ignored her, the way she forced a smile during family dinners, the way she lingered in silence after Daniel left the table. At first, James felt only pity for her. He had loved his late wife deeply, and seeing a young woman unloved in her own marriage struck him as deeply unfair. He would ask her how she was doing, try to lighten the mood with jokes, or simply listen when she wanted to talk. Emily responded with gratitude. She confided in him more than she did in her own husband. Then something unexpected happened. The more James listened, the more he found himself drawn to her, not just out of pity but with a tenderness that frightened him. He noticed how her laughter brightened the room, how her kindness reminded him of his late wife, how she had a softness that touched the empty spaces in his heart. James was a good man, and he knew this feeling was wrong. Emily was his daughter-in-law. She was married to his son. The thought of it made his chest tighten with guilt, yet the feeling grew quietly but persistently, and James found himself caught in a battle between his heart and his conscience. One evening, after Daniel left abruptly for a business trip, Emily sat with James on the porch. The summer air was warm, the cicadas humming in the trees. She sighed deeply and said, "Sometimes I wonder why I got married. Daniel doesn't even see me anymore. It feels like I don't exist." James looked at her, his heart breaking. He wanted to reach out to comfort her more than words could, but he clenched his hands together, keeping them on his lap. He said softly, "Emily, you deserve to be seen, you deserve to be loved, don't ever doubt that." She looked at him then, her eyes shining with tears, and for a brief second James felt something pass between them, an unspoken connection, raw and undeniable. It was both beautiful and terrifying. That night James barely slept. He paced the living room, staring at family photos on the wall. He saw Daniel as a boy holding James's hand. He remembered all the sacrifices he had made to raise his son, to give him a future. And now here he was, tempted by the very woman Daniel had chosen to marry. The guilt was suffocating. Over the following weeks, James kept his distance, but Emily's presence was always there, her voice, her kindness, her sadness. He realized that if he wasn't careful, he could ruin not only his relationship with his son but the very fabric of his family. One Sunday morning, James invited Emily for coffee on the porch. He looked her in the eyes and said, "Emily, I need to tell you something, not because I want to hurt you but because I want to protect both of us. I care for you more than I should, but it can't be more than that. You're my son's wife, and that line can never be crossed. Do you understand?" Emily was silent for a long moment, then nodded. Tears welled in her eyes. "I care for you too, James," she whispered, "but you're right, this would destroy everything. I don't want that." There was pain in her words, but also relief. From that day forward, their conversations shifted. They spoke less about personal feelings and more about practical matters. James encouraged Emily to talk openly with Daniel, to fight for her marriage instead of surrendering to loneliness. He even gave Daniel subtle advice, urging him to pay attention, to be present. In time, Daniel did begin to change, slowly, imperfectly. Perhaps it was Emily's insistence, perhaps it was James's quiet influence. The marriage was far from perfect, but there was effort again, a spark of commitment. As for James, he learned to pour his longing into something else. He joined a veterans volunteer group, began mentoring younger men at the community center, and picked up painting, something his wife had always loved. Through these outlets, he found a way to fill the emptiness without betraying his values. He still cared for Emily, but in a different way now. Not as a woman he longed for, but as someone he wanted to protect, someone he respected. His love transformed from desire into something purer, a commitment to her happiness, even if it meant stepping back. Years later, when he looked back on that period of his life, James realized it had been one of the hardest trials of his character. He had faced temptation not in the form of wealth or power, but of love, the kind of love that arrives at the wrong time with the wrong person. And in choosing restraint, he discovered a deeper kind of peace. Because sometimes true love isn't about claiming what you want, it's about protecting what matters most.